Hackney. My borough is just a few miles east of Westminster, but it can feel much further away. To people getting about their business here, MPs in the Houses of Parliament can seem remote and inaccessible. My friend Sophie Wilkinson writes about politics for young people at The Debrief. She spends a lot of time considering the disconnect between MPs and young voters in particular. Why do you think that so many young people feel so different to MPs?
The biggest thing affecting young people is the housing crisis and lots of rent problems, and at a time when lots of young people are feeling very insecure about where they live and whether they can afford it, a lot of MPs are second homeowners. Young people at the moment look at MPs and they see white, middle-aged men who don't necessarily experience anything like what young people today experience.
There's no doubt our elected representatives have an image problem. The public trusts MPs to tell the truth less than estate agents, bankers and even journalists.
Their image has been battered by the expenses scandal, the fact they could get a 9% pay rise later this year.
And of course, student voters fell out of love with their Lib Dem MPs when they U-turned on tuition fees. But there's another issue too. There's a severe lack of diversity amongst our MPs. They're mainly male and mainly white, and your chances of being elected to Parliament remain much higher if you went to private school. In recent years, we've seen an explosion of so-called political insiders becoming MPs. In the last election, nearly a third of candidates were already working in politics. Meanwhile, only 1% were manual workers. Is it any wonder then that this strange place they call Westminster Village seems further away from us than ever before? The Labour MP and former Home Secretary Alan Johnson took the scenic route to Parliament. He stacked shelves in Tesco and worked as a postman before becoming the Member of Parliament for Hull and West Hessel in 1997.
There are people in here. Clive Effort was an former taxi driver. We've got 2 former miners. But I suppose them being such exceptions, me as a postman sort of thing, we're kind of, I suppose, a shrinking part of Parliament. And it's understandable that that should be a concern, as it's a concern in the wider population.
And what are MPs like to work with?
Here, well, there's 650 of them, and there were about 650, funnily enough, staff in Slough Sorting Office, and you get all types. There's not as many women here as there should be, but there weren't as many women in Slough Sorting Office as there should have been.
Why do you think that people my age are so disengaged with politics today, and more specifically, why do you think they find MPs so difficult to relate to?
Even though, unlike, Churchill was the MP for Dundee for 10, 15 years and he went there 3 times. We all go back to our constituencies every weekend. People still have this idea that we're somehow remote. When I hear someone say, oh, I'm not interested in voting, they're all the same, I kind of think that's a lazy way of not actually taking an interest.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has been the Conservative MP for North East Somerset since 2010. As a white male who went to Eton and then on to Oxford and then onto a job in the city, and your family links to politics, would you agree that you pretty much epitomise the stereotype of a Conservative
Oh yes,
MP?
I probably am the stereotype of Conservative MP, but stereotypes aren't always accurate. There aren't a huge number of MPs of exactly the same type or with the same interests, and perhaps most importantly with exactly the same ideologies, and that I think is more important what people think than their educational background.
Surely with disengagement in politics at the level that it is, our political parties will have understood that things need to change at this election. So can we expect the candidates on our polling cards come May to seem anything more like the rest of us? Emily Benn has been selected to stand as the Labour candidate for Croydon South in May. Aged just 25, she doesn't look much like a regular MP.
The thing I think about politics is it should be open to anyone, their age, their background, their race. I think you should have a parliament that's representative of the country it serves. You shouldn't have just one of any one type of person.
Your family has been in the Labour Party for 4 generations. Do you think that this sort of trend of the Labour dynasties that are being built makes it look a bit
bad from the outside?
All I can say is, my local Labour Party selected me, so there were, over 300 local members, so I'm afraid I have to direct all questions to them. Judge me on my own efforts, my own ideas. I'm a councillor for the ward I was born in, so it's where I've grown up and lived all the 25 years that I've been alive. I think that matters far more than where you come from.
Jennifer Hudson and Rosie Campbell have researched everyone fighting a seat in May.
What would you say that our candidates for 2015 look like then?
I think we might see a little bit of progress in terms of the number of women MPs, but it's unlikely to be anything enormous, especially as if UKIP gains seats, they are way behind in terms of selecting women.
The other thing that we're seeing is that Labour and Lib Dem candidates, new candidates, are increasingly drawn from backgrounds that have links to Westminster. So they may be lobbyists, they may work for the party, be parliamentary researchers, but they have an inside connection to life inside Westminster.
Change seems to come slowly in Parliament, and it doesn't look like we should be holding our breath for our MPs to look a whole lot different after the election in May.